Hello, everyone, and welcome in. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome back for another episode of Rat Pack Fantasy Football. You can tell how antsy I am. Sometimes that theme song seems 5 seconds, and other times I'm going, fuck, can we get on with this already? But today we are here with a kind of a recap of week 2, kind of a mixed in with our Dynasty show here to see some of the risers and fallers for Dynasty. Here to help me with that, I've got Jeremy and Jesse. How's it going, guys?
It's going, man. It's you just blew up my eardrums with the A-Team intro there. It's turned my volume down my headset, but man, that brings back memories there. Mr. T and whatever those other guys' names are.
Right.
The one that mattered.
Just a little. It's a little bit before my time, thankfully. So I'm not that old, but I'm getting there. I'm creeping on it real fast. So I've talked to people, they don't even know what the ATM is. I'm like, oh, God damn it, I'm getting old. So yeah, just a daily reminder that age is creeping for us all.
I feel your pain, though. I had it maybe 2-3 days ago where I was had my headphones plugged into my PC and I was doing some work, and I don't know what I was doing, writing articles, and I had switched over, and there was this one page that I was using for research. It was connected to one of the vampire leagues I'm in on MFL. And I just happened to be scrolling through every once in a while for stats. I click one team, nothing, one team, nothing. There was one team who has it all set up, customized his profile page, where you'd click on it and it would have his vampire logo and it would go, and it would jump out every fucking time. It scared the shit out of me. And I'm sitting here in the dark with my kid in the other room going, ah! They're like, holy shit. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I remember. And then sure enough, 10 minutes later, I'd forget. It'd scare the shit out of me all over again. So jump scaring myself on a fantasy football webpage.
That's an advanced vampire league setup there. You got like a vampire popping out every 5 seconds.
Yeah, it was on MFL, and I don't know how we did it, but like he said it so his avatar was a GIF and it had audio attached to it. I don't know how, but it was pretty fucking annoying. That's what it was. At first, I was like, that's pretty cool. And then like 12 jump scares later, I'm like, I hate this asshole.
All according to plan, I'm sure.
Yeah, on his end. Just pissed me right off. So, alrighty, I guess we will get into it. We didn't really have too many significant injuries to deal with, but we'll get to the I guess the riser and faller from the Chubb injury later. We'll start with quarterback, though. I have, off the top of my head that I wrote down, 3 risers and 1 faller. Richardson looked like a monster riser. He was on pace for a huge game and looks like he may be easily the best of the rookie quarterbacks. Hopefully the concussion is only 1 week absence. Jordan Love is starting to prove that maybe he's legit. Could also be just shitty defenses. Who knows? And a slight riser for me, who was still not very good, Desmond Ridder, who proved, I guess he's a serviceable QB too. I don't know. He's not left for dead. So he's a riser just based on the fact that his value was so low, it had to go up. But and my 1 faller was Justin Fields, who, if you had asked me a month ago if I would take Justin Fields or Richardson in Dynasty, I would have laughed if you had said Richardson. Now I'm thinking like, I turned down the other day. I turned down Fields for my Richardson. So those are my 3 risers and my 1 faller. What do you guys think of them? And if you have anyone else to add in, feel free to do so. Somebody can talk now.
I'll take the mic. It's like Brock Purdy at quarterback. He's continually proving it. Like the floor is just so high with him in San Francisco. He might not be the high-end quarterback. We'll talk about Richardson here in a second. But he's just good, man. And they're going to keep winning with him, so there's no one's going to replace Brock Purdy in that offense. Like, I get it, people like Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold sucks, and he's awful. So we don't need to get into the Sam Darnold thing. But, yeah, I'm very much in on Brock Purdy. So I'll pay an early second for him. I don't mind if I need a QB. And we can just ride with that. To your point on Richardson, yeah, I moved him ahead of Kyler. Like, I'm just not going to take Kyler over him. I don't want to deal with that injury issue and everything like that. I would still take Kyler over Fields. That's a whole nother discussion. But I'm just going to ride with Richardson. He was my QB1. I've seen everything I need to see from him. So we're just going to keep riding.
Kyler?
I have Kyler like QB8 and I have Richardson at 8. So I've moved him to 8. Kyler's at 9. Like
Kyler didn't even factor into the discussion for me. I don't think I even have him left in my top 12 anymore for Dynasty.
I mean, there's just not a good enough quarterback for me to like kick Kyler out. Like it's just the 1 year, and then next year he'll be playing, so I'm not too worried about it. So if you can, like, I'll just keep buying Kyler. He's like, I'm at 45% rostership with Kyler. Like, if people are going to keep giving me discounts, I'll just keep buying him. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, especially with Cliff Kingsbury and whatever that experiment was. I mean, Kyler's going to get another shot, likely somewhere else. And, he's got the tools to put it together if he can put down the remote controller for a few seconds, especially in the off season, right? Then pick up a playbook. Maybe you can get it. But, yeah, I'm Team Kyler as well. I think, and certainly at this point, you'd probably take him over Fields.
Yeah, I would. I for sure would. I don't want to deal with the just disaster of the Fields and his lack of processing.
Until they draft Caleb Williams.
That's all right. Then they trade him.
Yeah, then they send him away. But yeah, let's talk about those other two, right? So Richardson for me, clear cut, big riser, and you can't buy him now, right? He's pretty much probably untouchable. Although last week I did manage to send him and a couple firsts for Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and throw in Isaiah Pacheco. So going from rebuild to immediate contender and pay dividends. So I was happy enough with that move. But yeah, that's the only situation I would ever sell Richardson, is if you're getting elite pieces back. But yeah, as far as Love is concerned, I think there's two sides of the coin to Love, right? Number one is he's thrown 3 touchdowns in both games. That's certainly not sustainable even for the best quarterbacks in the league. He's going to have some down weeks coming here. And that Green Bay offense has looked good. But like you said, is it just poor defensive play? How much of the matchups factoring in? So, I think we should pump the brakes a little bit on Love. At the same time, he last week did it without Aaron Jones. He's done it without Christian Watson for 2 weeks in a row. There's been a number of other injuries, especially in the offensive line for Green Bay. So that is a massive consideration. I don't think I would be interested in selling Jordan Love right now. I'd probably hold him if I had him, just to kind of see it out a little bit more. But yeah, he's definitely a riser for me. And then Desmond Ridder is just in this Arthur Blank offense where there's plenty of tools around him to succeed any given week. But I don't know. I'm still a bit skeptical if he brings the level of consistency. I'm laughing as I'm thinking about saying this next statement out loud. I don't know if he brings the same level of fantasy consistency as Marcus Mariota did in the same offense. I still need to see it. But obviously, right, 20 points a game from your QB, right? That's solid QB2 numbers in a super flex league. If he can continue to do what he did last week, then yeah, he's a clear riser.
All right, dynasty value. Let's rank the 5 we just talked about. I'm going Richardson, Fields, Love, Purdy, Ridder. I put it in the chat in case you can't remember the 5.
Okay, yeah, I was like blanking on him. Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, like, I really don't want Fields at his cost. So he is going to be 2 of me of those guys. So yeah, I'll have Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields. I'm going to go Purdy.
Yeah.
Love and Ridder. I just don't trust Ridder because he doesn't have the draft capital. So like I expect them to replace him at some point. Yeah. Where at least Love the first round pick, like they could extend him or give him a long term contract. I don't see that playing out with Ridder, so that's kind of how I have them ranked.
Yeah, and I'm the same way in terms of the ranking. The only reason I put Purdy ahead is the offense, although certainly the offense in Green Bay is a chip off the old block of the offense in San Francisco. So but yeah, I just believe in the weapons more in San Francisco. I want to see it a little bit more in Green Bay.
All right, moving on to tight end. I have 3 risers: Jake Ferguson, Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave. Anybody want to take a shot at how you would rank these 3 in Dynasty?
So it's I'm back and forth. I've gone back and forth with Musgrave and Laporta like all offseason and this week. I wanted to bump Musgrave ahead, but Laporta's just too good. They're back to back in my rankings. They're both pushing in the top 12 Dynasty tight ends. Ferguson, I'm not so sure about. Like, I think he'll be good in the short term. I just don't know his long-term situation, how that's going to play out for him. Because he's kind of an afterthought, and they basically are showing any tight end who has some skill can produce in that offense. So For him, like he'll be the clear third of those guys, but I think he's the easiest to target for like cheap production on a contender. But if I'm going on a startup, it's like, yeah, it's Laporta and Musgrave back to back for me.
See, for me, the Laporta was the easy one. I was debating whether or not it was Ferguson or Musgrave. I think it's Musgrave, but Sam Laporta for me was the easy one up top.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Musgrave, so I'll supplement that part.
Agree with Laporta. The only concern you might have for Laporta, which doesn't look like much of a concern right now, is when Jameson Williams comes back. And certainly, when the Lions aren't playing a team where they have to put up, constantly air the ball out and put up 40 points just to win the game. But yeah, Ferguson is an interesting one because I've been pretty high on Ferguson for a while. The problem now is Kellen Moore is gone, where he's, presumably he was hyper targeting the tight end. We know Dak hyper targets the tight end. Just seems to be his preference at quarterback. The problem is Dallas is rolling out all three of their tight ends. Schoonmaker, the rookie, even got himself an end zone target this week. I know in week one, who's the other guy, the tight end too? I'm blanking on him in Dallas.
Hendershot or
Hendershot, yeah. Hendershot was double covered, and he still almost came down with a touchdown in week one. So these guys are being used often. And, I would love Ferguson to have more of that role to himself. It doesn't seem like he does, so he's going to be more volatile than the other two. I'll go Laporta, Musgrave, Ferguson.
I have 5 fallers at tight end for me. Moeller, he's still young, so he hasn't really had a shot in this crappy offense, but he's a faller just, relative to how the other rookies are doing. They all seem to have passed him. I've got Adam Troutman, who just was absolutely useless despite there being no Greg Dulcich. Trey McBride seems like hope has faded, and he has somehow lost his job to the 90-year-old Zach Ertz. Dalton Schultz is not doing what he was doing last year, and despite the huge pass volume from the Texans so far, hasn't really translated. And the scariest one of all of them would be Kyle Pitts, who apparently has lost his job to Jonnu Smith somehow. What are your thoughts on these 5? It's kind of a mess.
I will say the interesting thing about Pitts is he led the team in routes run last week, but he just did not. So it's like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing over there, but it's a whole nother day for another podcast. So yeah, he's on the field. It's so frustrating with him. But kind of back to the falling with Moeller. If I could flip Moeller for Musgrave, I'm happily doing that in Dynasty. Like, I'm just going to smash accept that just because the offense at least looks sustainable and he's running the routes and Moeller has to deal with freaking, is it Hooper? I think it's Hooper. He has to deal with those, like blocking it from routes from. So yeah. But yeah, the McBride actually worries me the most of these young guys because he was the tight end one last year, but he can't beat out Ertz and he just can't get on the field. And he was historically inefficient as a rookie. I get it. Rookies take time, but he was really bad. So I'd just be trying to get out on McBride for whatever I can get. Like, I don't even just want to deal with that issue personally.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Ertz has always just known how to get open in short spaces, and he's doing it again. And Dobbs is finding him. I mean, he's looking like a steal if you waited on tight end, as long as he can stay healthy, right? So yeah, I'm kind of out on McBride. Unfortunately, I have a few copies that are rotting at the moment on my bench, but that is Dynasty, right? That's the role. That's the burden the cross we bear, I guess. But yeah, Kyle Pitts, right? Like, I remember maybe a year ago, maybe slightly more, I bought him for the equivalent of like 3 firsts in a Dynasty league. Just before, Arthur Smith's coming in and the offense is going to be more efficient. Look how he used Jonnu Smith. And, all the ridiculous narratives that we heard about Kyle Pitts. And, to my knowledge, he's still producing. Like you said, he's running routes. He's out there. He's relatively open, but I think the bigger issue that we're seeing is that, Arthur Smith wants to run the ball. It works for that offense, especially works when you have Bijan Robinson and, Tyler Algier, no slouch as an RB2. So they don't need him apparently they do need Jonnu Smith a bit more, but like, Mac Hollins getting the volume that he's getting, it doesn't make any sense. And Cordero Patterson's still out. So if he's actually healthy and in the game, he's going to see some targets, and they're calling it this Joker role that they have for him. And for an NFL offense, it does just enough to get the job done. For fantasy, it's so disappointing. And look, we're just not going to be able to. You can't sell Kyle Pitts right now. You certainly don't want to sell him at his current value. So you just got to kind of hold and pray, and probably bench him for a guy, certainly a guy like Laporta, and hopefully not, but probably for a guy like Ferguson.
Yeah, I have him and Kincaid on a roster, and I'm starting Kincaid over Pitts. But if you're rebuilding, just go buy Kyle Pitts for dirt cheap, because those points you're not going to get points, so you're trying to take anyways. Like, that's the type of guy I target, where the value insulation is still there. He'll probably be at worst case a 5th or 6th round startup pick next year.
Trey McBride, the one I've lost most faith in through the first 2 weeks. I had him stashed in one league mainly, where I was just like, okay, he's going to get a shot this year. Ertz I thought would be out a while, but through 2 weeks, it's been all Ertz, and I've gone to the point where he was someone I wasn't considering trading because I thought he had potential, to where I've had a few trade offers this week that I've sent out where he's literally been a throw-in where I'm like, maybe McBride will entice him and he'll look like something, but I'm out on him. I guess we'll move to running back. I have 5 risers here to various degrees. The Philly ones are the first 2, Gainwell and Swift. Swift, just because he rose from the dead here and might actually be relevant again and have value. Gainwell, I know it took a hit because he was out, but he's still significantly more valuable than he was a few weeks ago. Jalen Warren seems to get closer and closer to taking over every week. Tyjae Spears seems to have a bigger role and actually making himself kind of borderline flex worthy. And the biggest riser, I think, came out of nowhere was Brian Robinson of the Commanders, who appears to be their lead back there. What are your thoughts on those 5, guys?
Yeah, I love Brian Robinson. And I think, I was always pretty optimistic about his value this year, only because I don't trust Antonio Gibson. But that trust did creep back in this year. Eric Bieniemy, and they're going to use both backs, and that just never happened, right? I think Gibson fumbled early in the game, week 1, and he's just been in the doghouse ever since. But yeah, Brian Robinson looks legit. I think we were all excited about him in Dynasty pretty much before he got shot last year. And, ever since his recovery, he's been solid. Now he's in a very good offense. Howell looks legit. They can move the ball, and that's really all you need for Robinson to have those scoring opportunities. The Commanders are probably the biggest surprise for me of this year, and just how effectively they're moving the ball. And they have all of the weapons to kind of keep that up if Howell keeps up his level of play.
Yeah, I think it's one where people are like, man, Brian Robinson. So he was the least efficient running back on a per touch basis last year, and people are like, oh yeah, it's going to be Gibson. Nah, man, Gibson I'm so just done with Gibson. I want nothing to do with him. They obviously trust Brian Robinson, and that's the key thing with running backs. Like, you need trust to get down the field. If Gibson's not getting that work, and now Brian Robinson's earning targets, which is the Gibson role, it's like, what are we talking about? So yeah, Brian Robinson looks like a capable RB2 for you moving forward in this offense. So if you're interested, he's still not that expensive. You can happily get him. I will say the Swift thing that's the roller coaster that is DeAndre Swift. If he plays, he's on the field, he's going to produce. It's just the fact, he's never on the field and never gets that many. I think he has one more game with career touches than what he had last week. So yeah, it was the perfect matchup. Vikings terrible defense. So if you want to flip Swift and ride high with him, this is the perfect window to do it. The thing is, people are so entrenched in their DeAndre Swift belief, they probably won't trade him. They'll be like, oh, this is finally it. He's going to be an RB1 the rest of the year. It's yeah, I'd rather just get out from Swift and not deal with the roller coaster.
Remember when he was the RB2 overall in Dynasty rankings 2 years ago?
It just shows you how chaotic running back. Yeah, the running back rankings are just super chaotic. It's you know what? You could just have Christian McCaffrey and just enjoy production for these 5 years, right? And just do
That's the irony of all of this. We do these Dynasty things where it's oh, I want to build this team for 5-10 years down the road. Look back at what the Dynasty rankings look like in 2021 or 2020. It was the number 1 and 2 receivers were Michael Thomas, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah.
That like the running backs were DeAndre Swift and CEH. It's like, oh, it turns out they didn't actually have 5 years worth of value. So
I think that like window you're talking about with the wide receivers and like them faltering and Juju and those guys, I think that shifted how we play Dynasty a lot, where people are like, you know what, I'm just going to dive into youth and get those young guys because they don't want the old guys dying on their roster, right? But yeah, the running backs, like I've noticed we're treating it more in 2 to 3 year windows as it is. So like I just want the producers, with the exception of like Bijan and Gibbs, these guys that are earlier first round picks. That's a different story. But like for the most part, just give me McCaffrey, give me Eckler, like instant producers, or guys that are hammers, quote unquote, and I'll just ride with those.
Yeah.
I trade it based on position. Running back, I'm looking at it in this year and what your next year value is. Mm-hmm. And even that's sketchy. Wide receivers, I'll sometimes, like when I'm working on a dynasty trade value. I'll do my redraft trade value for this year. And then that's how I convert it from redraft to dynasty. If you're a running back, whatever your redraft value is, I will double it. For a receiver, I will triple it. For a quarterback and a tight end, it's different. I think a quarterback, I think I gave them more like 5 years. A tight end, I think I gave them 4 years, but it's all different. So,
but just running back to Swift real quick, like pun unintended, I guess. But as far as DeAndre Swift is concerned, we have always wanted since last year, and we saw Miles Sanders do it. We've wanted the running back one in this Philadelphia offense. Kenny Gainwell, as much as I'd like to see that happen, I'm just after that Swift game, it's hard to see, Swift just sitting on the bench, right? Rashad Penny hurts my heart, but that's not going to happen now unless there's injury. So, in terms of DeAndre Swift, you can't buy him. He's too expensive, but I think you got to hold him on your roster, especially if you're contending. The chance that he forces Gainwell to take a significant backseat, and he's the beneficiary, seeing those wide open holes from those Jalen Hurts RPOs is just it's fantasy gold, right? So if he really is getting the workload that he got last week, even if it's slightly less, he could very well be an RB1. We know it's not Penny, it's not Scott, could be Gainwell, but Swift, I'm holding him, and I'm going to ride that.
Yeah, you can with Swift. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, like you can move him for a lot right now. So if you are worried about him, now's the time to do it. If you have faith, you just ride with it. Like it's it's all about how you feel. Like if you want to move him, go move him for somebody that you're more confident in. Like he's basically a top 5 round pick right now, so just go do that.
All 5 of them are on your dynasty waiver wire. Which order are you picking them up? I think for me it's Swift, Robinson, Gainwell, Warren, Spears.
No, Warren. Gainwell's last for me. I'll go B-Rob and Swift. They're really close for me. I just like the more. I can't choose between the two of them, but they're a clear top tier.
I'm adding Swift first because I think I can sell him for more.
Yeah, he's worth the most by far.
100%. But then it's Warren for me. It's only a matter of time. It's probably next year, but it's only a matter of time before he becomes the 1A. He looked amazing against a good Cleveland defense last night. And then Tajay Spears, also only a matter of time. He's looked phenomenal. Mm-hmm. They're giving him a ton more work than we expected, and he's putting up serviceable flex points. So I have him in a few spots in Dynasty where I'm RB needy, and he's likely. I got to check the matchup, but he's likely in my lineup as soon as next week. So for me, Gainwell now.
Yeah, he's Spears is my 2 guy. He's the 1 guy I expect to be the starter next year. Like I don't think them bringing back Henry seems in the card. So I'll go Swift, Spears, B-Rob, Warren, and then Gainwell. Like I just that Philadelphia backfield it's just the cluster sometimes. Yeah. So yeah.
The breaking news that just came up made me remember there was a late edition I forgot to add. Nick Chubb undergoes surgery, confirmed out for the year. The Browns are saying they aren't going to pursue a running back in free agency, and Ford will be the lead guy. Where do you take Ford among these 5? After Swift and Robinson?
He's after. I'll put him third. I'll put him 4th, probably behind Robinson. I'm taking Spears over him. I'm going to take Robinson just because we know he's going to get that volume. But like Cleveland told us all offseason they trust him because they didn't want to bring anyone else in.
Yeah.
They traded for what's his name, Pierre Strong, but like they just needed depth chart pieces, and Ford's the guy. So like I expect Ford to be used like heavily this year.
Pierce Strong's going to be the pass catcher.
Yeah, he could be.
Fine.
But like how valuable is that role? Yeah.
Yeah, I want Ford over Swift at the moment. I mean, I'm not going to go out and 1-for-1 trade that, right? In terms of value, that's not a smart dynasty move. But I trust the role that Ford now has. If that is indeed true, that they're not going to go out and sign it, I'd love to hear that news. But I trust that over Swift keeping that role, given just how much Philly has been willing to kind of switch their backs in and out.
All right. For our fallers, they're kind of lumped into three groups here. We've got Kendre Miller and Charbonnet, who are the rookies who either haven't gotten the role or can't stay healthy. They're fallers. We've got a middle group here of Algier, Khalil Herbert, Pierce, Pacheco, and Madison, who have either, in the case of Madison and Pierce, haven't really produced, and the others seem to have lost, touches to someone in the backfield. And the last one is Nick Chubb, who I forget which one was it. Was it Deepak Chona? He was saying that he thinks the estimated timeline for this is 15 months before he's back on the field. And this may be the last time we see Chubb. So he's a faller from, a top 12 back in Dynasty, maybe 20 because it's Dynasty. I think I sent out a 3rd-round pick to someone for him earlier, just as a, screw it. But I don't know if we ever see Chubb again. So what are your thoughts here on this whole group of guys who had a bad week?
Just on Chubb real quick. I'm lumping him in the same group. I know he's older, but I'm lumping in the same group as J.K. Dobbins. He's just dynasty dead to me. It's sad because he's phenomenal. Both of those backs I love, but you're not. The odds are so low that you're going to see them in a meaningful role.
They've both had this similar injury already. That's what makes it even worse.
Yeah.
The Chubb injury is worse too. Like both his injuries are super severe. Like they're not your just regular ACL. It's like multiple ligaments. It's just it's bad.
Yeah. So I mean, you're stuck holding the bag. If you can get a third for him, go ahead. But they're likely going to rot on your roster. What I'm trying to do with a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who I have enough of, is I'm holding him in my IR spot, and then I'm looking for any sort of bit of hype or news or when he gets traded, and then I'll just take whatever I can get for him at that point when his value spikes. And Chubb is probably the same way, but I don't know that that's going to be any good news coming out.
Dobbins, at least, if he, say it takes him a year to get back 15 months, he might actually be young enough to still have a decent year left in him and some jump. Chubb could be 29 or 30 by the time. Even if he comes back fully recovered, he's going to have naturally regressed. Like, just based on age, how much is a 29-year-old running back coming off of multi-ligament surgery going to have? So I think you put it well. Chubb and Dobbins are just kind of dynasty dead for me. Algier, Herbert, Pacheco, all three. This is literally, I wrote this article for the league winners during the offseason of sell the day 3 running backs because they never hold up in the second year. And the 3 I said were the best sells. Now that I've literally just had an epiphany here and realized that my 3 targets to sell were Algier, Pierce, and Pacheco. I'm going to go victory lap this after the show because I said all 3 would be dead by the midway point of the season. And it looks like they're pretty much half value by week 2 or 3. So,
I mean, at least Pierce has the job. Like he's still the guy. Like with Pacheco, it's a little bit more clouded. And Algier, I mean, he's playing with Bijan. I don't know what people expected, to tell you the truth. Like he kind of, I don't view him as a faller. I just view him kind of as what he is. He's a handcuff.
That's why you have to sell day 3 running backs, though. He didn't do anything wrong. It's James Robinson. He didn't do anything wrong. They just drafted a first rounder, and he was dead.
That's why I did with Ramondre and both Pollard. I was like, sell them before the draft because you don't know if they get nuked. And then if they don't get nuked, they still have that value. So like that's kind of how you have to trade these day 3 guys until they get that contract. It's kind of like year by year basis for them.
How about Madison, right? Because look, he looked terrible. You can't. There's no way of sugarcoating that. But he's probably still got the role, right? He's probably he's not. You can't start him every week, but he's probably a nice flex in good matchups. And that Vikings offense is just so dynamic. Like, I want the RB1, and I don't think Chandler's taken that away. Are they signing someone? I don't know. So, Madison, he's falling. You can't sell him. You wouldn't buy him. But if you have him, I mean, I wouldn't look to get out just yet.
I know we're talking Dynasty, but I had a redraft trade that literally came through last night at 8:00, and it was my Kyron Williams, and they offered me Madison and Brandon Cooks, and I was like, oh, I'm going to take that. And then as I sat there, and I'm going, I can't take that. And I held on to Kyron Williams over Alexander Madison. I didn't see that one coming, but at this point, like, I was the low guy on Madison anyways. He was in that group with Calvin Ridley for me, Ralvin Kidley. So I was out on Madison when people thought he was going to be good. So I'm way out now. He's
matchup dependent. You played Philadelphia and you played Tampa Bay, two of the best run defenses in the league. Sure. Like, he's going to get shut down, and their offensive line kind of sucks on top of it too. Yeah. So he's kind of like Najee, where he can't improve an offensive line. He can't make it better. So he needs better matchups, and he will produce. So if you have him, you're not going to get much for him. So just write him out, and you can spot start him. And then the rookies, I'm going to throw Devin Achane in there. Like, the dude's been on the field. He's just not seeing anything. So I don't know what's going on with him. But Kendre and him, I got roasted yesterday because I said Kendre and Devin Achane have been the two biggest, like, disappointments so far among rookies. And people are like, they're injured. I'm like, it's still disappointing. Like, they're not on the field. So I get it. But you can't be like, I'm just disappointed. It is what it is.
Okay, so, like, yeah. To your point, though, I get it that they're injured. But how many times have we seen this, whether it be a wide receiver or running back, where they lose a year to injury, then they lose a year to suspension, where they get out of rhythm, they get away from the game, and they never really get it back. That's why I think Jameson Williams is going to be done. He had an injury, missed most of the time, looked like shit, went to come back, out 6 games. Like, these things, I get it, may not be, it's no fault of their own. It's still career threatening here when they just out of sight, out of mind. All it takes is, look at all he has is one. Yeah, exactly. One Puka Nacua has to pop up on his roster, and suddenly it's like, we know he didn't do anything wrong, but he's expendable. This guy came out of nowhere. So
yep, 100%.
Well, and it's about the guy we were just talking about, Brian Robinson, right? Same thing. He had a bunch of hype, got shot, was out for 2 months, right? And then it took a long time for his price to come back, and now we're talking about him as a riser because his price didn't even come back until last week, right? Until we actually really saw him dominate. So it takes time for some of these guys, and even a guy like Fields, who we were talking about, where even if they're on the field, right, their value can just dip dramatically. Fields for me right now is a buy because his value is just in the tank. If you can get Fields for a 2nd round pick right now, I mean, I'll do it. I'll just toss out some easy low balls, and someone's bound to take something like that.
Well, yeah, like people are
too, but like there was, I'm not gonna lie, I posted that video yesterday of Fields, and after rewatching it a few times, I'm going, holy shit, this Fields look like he's lost out there. You're right. I'd still take the 2nd round, take a shot on him for a 2nd round pick, but fuck, does he look terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like you can trade him for Jordan Love now, and it's like nobody would have ever thought those two would be comparable. So like, yeah, if you want to go get Fields, you can get him. You just have to accept the risk that is Justin Fields. He's an incredibly risky asset because he can't process right now, and his footwork's all screwed up. It's kind of like Baker in Cleveland. There's just a lot of things going wrong for him, and it may never get figured out, or it may. And if it does, the value goes up. It's just that's the risk you have to take with those guys.
Yep.
All right, we will move on to the wide receiver risers. We have the obvious Puka Nacua, Jaden Reed. We had some guys at big days. Nacua, Jaden Reed, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Raheed Shaheed, and Jordan Addison. I think easily I take Addison here. I guess you could even lump Flowers in. He's also a huge riser. Addison and Flowers are monsters for me. Love Shaheed, love Reed. Starting to come around on Nacua. I liked Collins and Tank, but those two worry me the most. In the first 2 games, CJ Stroud has dropped back to pass 54 times. I don't know how sustainable this Texans offense is once they get outside of their own dog shit division. So I think for me, like I said, Addison and Flowers are pretty easily the top 2 here. Then I think I'd prefer Jaden Reed. Maybe not. Maybe Puka Nacua, then Jaden Reed, and then the
It's
two
Puka.
Texans. But
Yeah, like I'll jump on the Puka train. So I'm
we gotta
a team
talk
that is
about that.
rebuilding. I sent freaking Calvin Ridley for Puka and Tank, and the guy was like, I should take it, but I'm not going to. And I was like, dude, I don't need Ridley. He's helping you. You're a contender. But the guy didn't want to do it. And I was like, oh boy, here we are. So yeah, the Puka hype train is absurd. But yeah, it is what it is. He's setting records. Like he's not just being good. He's being incredibly legendary. I think he has the 14th most targets of all time of like in 2 games for like a wide receiver start their career. Like it's like a historic bar where he's at. So yeah, he's doing anything you could have ever hoped. And like, I get it. It's just, he's worth a boatload. But to the more guys that we like kind of expected with Addison and Flowers in those games, yeah, like they're doing what we wanted them to do. So you should be very happy with all 3 of those guys. And then Jaden Reed, he looks kind of what we hoped. It was kind of a bet between him or Mims for a lot of people, and he's the one that has taken that role and run with it. Mims, not so much. He's just not seen all the targets. And the Houston guys, like I like both of them. Nico looks like he's a solid wide receiver too. But to your point, like, yeah, if they pass at the same rate, they will set the record for completions and attempts in an NFL season. So it's going to come down. But yeah, Tank Dell, he saw 10 targets. He was up there in leaguers and routes. Like, that's what you want to see. So I would be very bullish on Tank too.
Yeah, but just we got to keep in mind and pump the brakes a little bit. I know Stroud threw for 340 yards. I know those guys were both great, but they were playing the Indianapolis Colts, who are horrible. Play your wide receivers and probably your tight ends against the Indianapolis Colts. All right, especially if Richardson gets healthy and they keep scoring. Right, that defense just can't cover anybody. That secondary is horrible. But yeah, that said, Nico Collins phenomenal. Right, I'm big. In on Nico Collins, and I love what I'm seeing from Tank Dell. But Puka Nacua, man, this guy is, as you mentioned, Jesse, historic in terms of his production. I saw something on Twitter a couple of days ago where it was Matthew Stafford, the kingmaker, the wide receiver kingmaker, citing Calvin Johnson. Obviously, it was Cooks and Woods alongside Cooper Kupp, at least for, well, I guess it wasn't Cooks, but anyway, Cooper Kupp, right? Historic season. So Matthew Stafford is Kenny Gainwell made him super relevant, and I think a top 10 wide receiver, right? One season. So it should be no surprise that if Nacua is the number 1, that he is getting fed. I think the surprise is that he was going to be the number 1. Some people, including myself, were thinking it was going to be Van Jefferson. Obviously, Van Jefferson is complete trash compared to these other guys. But look, and tell me which way you're going to go on this one. I got a trade offer this morning. I woke up to this in my inbox. I have maybe 2 shares of Puka. He was on my taxi squad, and my team last week scored the most points in the league. I'm 2-0. I'm a contender. It's looking good. And a guy offered me a first-round pick and a 4th on top, which, who cares, for Puka Nacua. And I haven't hit accept yet. It's the value's there. I should take it. But if I'm contending, even with Cooper Kupp back, I'm feeling like Nacua could give me flex-worthy production on a consistent level. People are talking about the Robert Woods role for Nacua. It seems very real. And if Stafford stays healthy, right, like, double-digit points weekly is not out of the question, even with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup. So what would you do in that situation? You're a contender, and you got offered a first for Nacua. Are you taking it, smashing it, or are you keeping Puka?
What kind of first are we talking about? Is it a late first, or is it like a mid to early first?
Looks like it might be mid to early.
You
gotta take it. You gotta take it anyway. You gotta take it.
I don't care if it's guaranteed the 112. I'm taking it. And
the thing with Tutu Atwell is the wide receiver 16, and people aren't even talking about that shit. So he's supporting 2 wide receivers very highly right now. Their defense sucks. This is the thing, and Stafford's going to support. So I get it. He'll be like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 week to week when Kupp comes back. But that's still valuable. It's just how much do you value that over a first round pick? Are you a contender? Are you rebuild? All these things come into factors.
Yeah, but if you're a contender, if you're solid, right? If you have Jamar, I'm thinking of my lineup. If you have Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, Waller at tight end, you're solid pretty much everywhere else. You have that upside. You're scoring the most points. Do you keep Puka, or do you take the first and maybe flip it down the line?
If he's just a bonus to your squad, I'll take the first and be okay with it. And just be, if he becomes like a stud, you kind of have to accept that. Like that's the thing you have to do when you trade him for first.
I know I should
first, and I was starting to advocate for Nakua because this was always my thing. There's no guarantee Cooper Kupp's going to be back. This
100%.
may linger, and if he's not back, you kind of brought up my point originally that I was originally going to make for me was the Matthew Stafford thing. Do you know in NFL history the 2 highest receiving yard totals were Calvin Johnson and Cooper Kupp? Both with Matthew Stafford that year. This is what he does. He locks onto one guy and just peppers them. So I'm high on Nakua the last few days. Any first rounder, I'm taking it. Just because how many times like this, I make a solid profit in dynasty leagues doing this. The guy where he comes out of nowhere, everyone gets really high on him. I sell him for a first rounder. And then I even do it with running backs. Like we did this with Elijah Mitchell. Sold him for a first and a second. 6 months later, you couldn't get a fifth for him. Michael Pittman sold him at the height of his power for 2 first rounders. Ended up getting 2 good picks out of it. Now you wouldn't get 1 first rounder for Pittman.
I flipped Pittman for CeeDee Lamb straight up last year. It's like, you can do stuff like that. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with Nakua himself. It's the fact that this profile right here doesn't hit nearly as much as taking the first rounder. Same with the argument I made for Algier, Pierce, and Pacheco. They may be the Austin Eckler, but give me the first round pick that's going to hit 90% more likely than the day 3 nobodies. So
yeah, I'll say the late first round pick is a little bit warrior. Like that one, I could at least talk myself out of it. If it's like mid to early, like you're talking about, you got to take it because there's some serious studs coming out next year.
True. Yeah, but I want to win this year, right? So this is my issue, and I can, right? I mean, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Devonta Smith, Waller, Lamar Jackson, running backs are solid with Barkley, Mixon,
you don't even need
Sanders.
Puka.
It's no, I don't. But I do.
That's where
I need.
You should
need elite
go get more. So like, go see what else.
Flex league, right? But what would you get? So listen, if I flip Puka for the first now, who am I buying later for a first? Let's assume Puka stays healthy. He's not putting up this level of production, but he's doing well. I'm just going to end up buying a guy later on who I hope produces the way I'm pretty sure Puka is going to continue to produce in that offense. Like you said, with the terrible defense, with really not a running game because Kyron was used well through the air, although they were playing the 49ers. Stafford's just going to be airing it out all season. And even if Puka's the number 2, that's still a good role.
It's good.
I don't know, man. I know we say this every year.
Yeah.
But we say this every year, and every year the draft comes up and it's, this class isn't as good. But, like, have you looked at I'm not even talking for super flex leagues. Like, I'm looking at the top 12 right now on NFL mock draft database. Marvin Harrison, Raheem Sanders, Travion Henderson, Egbuka, Brock Bowers.
The running backs, man.
What's that?
Yeah. The running backs are struggling. Yeah. They're struggling right now.
20 players deep in running back and 25 deep in running back and wide receiver that I would take over Puka. But I got to head to work, so we got to get going and get into the fallers here. So cool. Wide receiver fallers, we've got 2 guys who I thought might take the next step, but Bateman looks like he's left for dead. Dotson seems like he is the number 2 and not going to surpass McLaurin, and 2 rookies who I was higher on, and I have a few shares of them. They both look completely non-existent, and I know don't bail on rookies after 2 games, but for me, I've sold a couple of shares of these 2, and it's not just the fact that they were non-existent through 2 games. It's the mix together of didn't like them through the draft process. Mm-hmm. Thought there were holes in their profile, whether it be athletically or production. Through training camp, they were lackluster. They lost out to pretty much, anyone ahead of them on the depth chart. They got beat out by Josh Palmer and Adam Thielen and the different instances. And now they look like they're 4th and 5th receivers on their team. So I unfortunately am out on Mingo and Quentin Johnston unless a big injury comes. I still want some Dotson. I don't think he's left for dead, but the rest of the 3, if I have Bateman, Mingo, or Johnston, I'm probably looking to move on if I can.
Bateman's the one that has a profile. Dotson's weird because him and McLaurin both really aren't earning all the targets. Like both of them are kind of just meh. And even Howell had a good game last week, and they were solid, but they're not earning targets at a high enough rate where you have confidence in them. So, I mean, Terry's been a sell for me for a while just because he's never been able to produce. Dotson's a good player. It's just you kind of have to wait with him until it gets a little bit better, and who knows when that's going to happen. So he's not as much of a faller as, say, Quentin or Bateman. Like, Bateman is just what I don't really want Bateman. At least Quentin, he's a rookie, so he has that insulation for this year. But you have to be careful with that value insulation. It can dissipate really fast if they're not doing anything. So if Quentin doesn't earn a role by, like, week 6, he's going to be, like, falling pretty far. So if you want to get out now and you anticipate it, like, I get it. It makes sense. And Mingo, he's just a risky prospect. We knew that coming in. I'm more willing to wait with him because he's on the field, at least, because they have nobody in that. Like, Adam Thielen got 9 targets last week. It's the old-ass Adam Thielen. And they're dependent on Hurst. It's just – that offense is just full of mid players. Like, I like some of the guys, but it's just so like he can at least jump ahead. So I'm willing to pump the brakes on him compared to the other guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as far as Quentin Johnston's concerned, I mean, there's gonna be some hype around him next year. I mean, Keenan Allen looks great, but we don't know how much longer he has left. There's going to be some sort of narrative next offseason about Keenan Allen. He's a year older. Has he lost a step? One of these guys is bound to get injured. And if they do, Quentin Johnston is going to get some hype next year. It feels like a Treylon Burks to me in terms of he's going to retain that value. So if you can't sell him for what you like this year, I would wait until the offseason and then try and get out on him. As for Bateman, no, Flowers is the number one there. Mark Andrews is back and healthy. Bateman really has no value to me because Lamar just proved that even in this pass-centric offense, he's still going to run the ball. He needs to for that team to be effective on offense. And then Dotson is, it's just a waiting game for him. McLaurin is good enough to hold him off, and Howell is not good enough probably to support an entire offense of fantasy viable guys.
Burks was a good comparison, though, for Johnston because that's exactly what I was thinking. But you even see with his value, when he gets his value was dead after year 1. It fell right off the table. Yep. Year 2, he got huge value boost because it was going to be all him. Now, if you get a window like that for Quentin Johnston next offseason, sell high because there may not be a D-Hop incoming, but we see how quickly that perceived value fell right off the table. So
and I don't want to take too much time on this, but Jameson Williams is one of my highest owned players. And I don't necessarily think that he's in that profile because he's supposed to be a better route runner than these guys and get some separation. But the way I've been thinking about it with these rookie wide receivers coming in is, and you see it with Zay Flowers, is you want these guys, you see it somewhat with Addison, you want these guys who are separators more so than you want these guys who are downfield threats making the massive plays on Saturdays, right? So Quentin Johnston could be good, but obviously Zay Flowers is the quick riser because he can separate and he's earning targets as a result of it. Quentin Johnston can't even see the field.
Yeah, and the guys that are the best are the ones that combine the two. They're separators and work downfield. That's Chris Olave. Like, that's the dream scenario. It's just we don't get very many of those guys. So if you have a guy like that, like, that's a hit. But usually they have one problem where they're missing one or the other. So yeah.
All right, that wraps up our Week 2 Dynasty Recap, Risers and Fallers. I am Aaron for Jeremy and Jesse. Thank you all for tuning in to Rat Pack Fantasy Football. Take care, everyone, and have a great day. We will see you. What is today? Monday. So this is releasing Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday is when we do game recaps.
Profiles. Yep. AFC, NFC. Yeah.
I'm trying to blank all of a sudden on my schedule because we recorded a day in advance. So Wednesday, Thursday, you're right, is game recap. So we will be here tomorrow with a game recap. What's the Thursday nighter? It's an NFC game, right?
It is.
I haven't even looked at it.
Is it Niners Giants?
Oh,
yep,
it is Niners.
Yep. Okay.
Yuck.
All right,
just
so
yuck.
we will be here NFC home game. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care and have a great day. Bye, guys.
Yep.